Welcome to this explainer. For years, the buildup to the artificial intelligence revolution felt, well, incredibly quiet. It had this slow, almost nostalgic academic pacing. But underneath that completely calm surface, a massive technological storm was brewing. And today, we're heading straight into the eye of that storm. We're going to focus on a company valued at nearly $1 trillion. And more specifically, we are looking at the highly restrictive, totally fascinating safety mission behind their flagship model, Claude. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei actually has a great way of describing this rise. He calls it a smooth exponential. Basically, you watch a graph for years, and it feels like absolutely nothing is happening. It's just math and a bunch of scrolling on whiteboards, and then, zoom, it just goes completely crazy. Today, his once underdog lab has suddenly transformed into this breakout juggernaut, and it's completely reshaping entire industries pretty much overnight. So let's get into section 1, the smooth exponential, from underdog to juggernaut. The path Anthropic took to actually get here is really fascinating. They're guided by a sibling duo, Dario, the visionary, and Daniela, the operator. Now, they actually started out as pioneers over at OpenAI. Back in 2016, Dario was championing this really countercultural idea that simply scaling up computing power would make models vastly smarter. But by 2021, they defected. And why? Well, it came down to deep disagreements over safety and a fundamental lack of trust in leadership's values. So they left, they gathered an early team in a San Francisco park, and they founded Anthropic to do things their way. Fast forward to 2024 and 2025, and their enterprise models have absolutely skyrocketed their revenue to incredible heights.
Moving on to Section 2, teaching Claude to be good, baking values into code.
Right from day one, Anthropic set out to be the ultimate safety-conscious AI lab. And this safety-first mentality, it is built directly into their business model. Dario fundamentally believes that if you pick a business model that conflicts with your personal values, you are eventually going to betray those values. It's just inevitable. So they made a very explicit choice to focus on enterprise tools rather than consumer social media. Think about it. Social media algorithms are essentially designed to maximize engagement, encourage addiction, and feed these endless advertising loops with AI-generated slop. Anthropic went the other way. They want their AI to help biotech firms cure diseases and help the energy sector become way more efficient. But here's the catch. To be genuinely helpful in the enterprise space, you have to be trustworthy. And that means you have to completely eliminate hallucinations. Because large language models are basically just probabilistic word prediction engines. If they don't have the necessary data, they will just confidently hallucinate false information. They make things up. Building a truthful model that absolutely does not deceive the user is at the very core of Anthropic's mission to make AI harmless. So that begs a question. How do you actually decide what makes an AI good? Well, you give it a constitution. Anthropic trained Claude using foundational documents of human history, like the UN Declaration of Human Rights. They went as far as consulting with religious leaders to bake in core transcendent human values. The ultimate goal was to create an entity with professional warmth. Approachable, but appropriately distant. And let me tell you, it was a really delicate balance. Some of the early versions of Claude were actually way too nanny-ish. Like, if you asked it for the weather, it would express deep, overwhelming concern for you getting cold. They had to very carefully tune that dial to get it just right. All right, Section 3, the future of work, superpowers, and casualties. Let's talk about $285 billion. That is the exact amount of market value that literally vanished overnight in the software sector shortly after Anthropic released a tool called Claude Core. Wall Street traders are out there calling it the SaaS apocalypse. When AI suddenly gives humans these digital superpowers, the entire landscape of work doesn't just shift, it fundamentally shakes. And Dario Amodei has been incredibly direct about where this is heading. He's warning us that AI won't just be a helpful little assistant forever. Step 1 is kind of what we see right now. Automating about 90% of our tasks, which makes humans incredibly leveraged and 10 times more productive. Step 2, that's happening internally right now at Anthropic, where their Claude code tool is writing almost 100% of the code for certain engineers. But step 3 is the big one. That is where the job itself just goes away. Dario has estimated that as these models become capable of doing entire jobs independently, AI could eliminate 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs. But look, it's not all doom and gloom. What happens to the humans in all this? Well, our jobs will likely pivot heavily toward human-to-human interaction. Take the medical field, for example. The AI's role will be acting as this ultimate expert diagnostician, running the data, looking at tests, and presenting treatment options instantly. And the human's role? doing the physical exams, holding a patient's hand, and providing bedside manner. It's the things that require true empathy and genuine physical presence. Which brings us to Section 4, drawing red lines, colliding with the Pentagon. Now things get a bit complicated geopolitically. Anthropic actually partnered with the Department of Defense to allow their models onto classified networks to help aid in national defense. But when the Pentagon demanded full use of the technology without any guardrails, Anthropic refused. And that led to threats of them being blacklisted. It brings up a massive, completely unresolved question. Does a private tech company have the right to place ethical boundaries on the defense strategies of an entire nation? Well, for Anthropic, the answer is a resounding yes. They established very strict red lines. They outright prohibit Claude from ever being used for mass surveillance or for autonomous weapons. Their absolute non-negotiable rule is that a human must always make the final life and death call. They're actively fighting against a Dr. Strangelove scenario where some automated system detects a threat and just launches a catastrophic retaliation entirely on its own with absolutely zero human oversight. Section 5, withholding the superweapon, the Mythos dilemma. Lurking in the background of their headquarters was the quiet development of an internal model called Mythos. Now, Mythos wasn't just a step forward, it was a massive, totally unexpected leap. It possessed this shocking ability to identify thousands of deep cybersecurity vulnerabilities across every single major operating system. The raw power of this model literally spooked the researchers who built it. When they finally gave early access to select corporate testers to see what it could do, the feedback was chilling. One tester essentially came back and told them, look, this is a super weapon. You should have to own a gun license to use it. Please don't release this. Think about it. If Mythos was fully unleashed and fell into the wrong hands, it was essentially a master key to the entire digital world. We're talking about the potential to hack global banking systems, pry open classified state secrets, and completely cripple critical national infrastructure. It was the AI equivalent of handing every single person on Earth a nuclear bazooka. So what did Anthropic actually do? They created Project Glasswing. They severely restricted access to Mythos, very carefully deciding exactly who got to use it, based purely on strict cybersecurity defense needs. And by doing this, they took an enormous commercial hit. They willingly sacrificed massive profits and technological dominance just to ensure this capability stayed completely out of the hands of malicious actors. And finally, Section 6, the ultimate AI paradox, the Oppenheimer dilemma. Dario Amodei fully acknowledges the intense paradox of building this incredibly powerful technology. He uses this really poignant analogy to explain it. He says Anthropic is trying to build an AI company that is 10 times safer than anyone else's. But if someone asks him if he can guarantee his airplane will never ever crash, he admits you can't possibly guarantee that. They can only try to build the absolute best defenses, knowing full well that the bad guys will eventually get their hands on this technology too. The stakes here are just unimaginably high. The CEO of Anthropic himself estimates that based on the current trajectory of this technology and global geopolitics, there is a 10 to 25% chance of civilizational collapse. He freely admits that 25% is far too high. Think about it. If there was a 25% chance your airplane would crash, you definitely wouldn't get on it. His entire life's mission right now is to drive that percentage down as close to zero as possible. Which leaves us with this final, genuinely haunting question. Anthropic paints a picture of this incredible utopian future where AI cures diseases and brings immense global prosperity. But is that utopian promise of AI really worth a 10 to 25% risk of civilizational collapse? It is the ultimate gamble that humanity is taking right now, and the wheel is already in motion. Honestly, think about that the next time you ask a chatbot for a recipe. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the big questions, and I'll see you next time.